Welcome to Preservation Travels with Lane and Kevin here at our Restoration Nation.
We've driven 2.5 hours today to give you a tour of this amazing property that was originally built on what was the frontier of the Wild West at the time. Welcome to the Horace Franklin Rogers house here in beautiful Fort Smith, Arkansas. It's an incredible property built in 1904 by a gentleman who owned a brickyard. And one of the things I love most about the exterior of this house is the glazed brick he used to construct it. We don't see glazed brick very often in residential construction. We see it really frequently in commercial buildings, but this is one of the few examples of that use in a residential building. The home itself, as I said, is neoclassical revival in influence. However, once you're through the front door, this house is a mix match of various designs that we see at the time. There's a little bit of neoclassical revival, there's a touch of Victorian, and then we're moving into the arts and crafts period, and we can see all of that here in this home. We even get all the way to the 1930s with the electrical design in the house, so we see a little bit of everything that was going on in American architecture in the early 20th century. So let me take you on a walk through this beautiful space. Right inside the front door, and already the beautiful architectural elements have started. First of all, a 5-foot wide quarter-sawn oak front door, all original, beautifully intact. And then of course, we have these incredible stained glass side lights and fan light over the entryway. This is where we start to see the arts and crafts influence come into play. Now remember, this is 1904 to 1909 construction, so that means the arts and crafts period really hadn't started yet. So this was the cutting edge of design that went into this house. So here we start to see more naturalized elements going into design, and then more straight linear lines that we would not have seen in the Art Nouveau period that was just before this. One of the things about this house that is so incredible is the use of oak throughout the space and the different cuts that they gave us. Here on this wainscoting, we see beautiful quarter-sawn oak, but then in our trim pieces, we have tiger oak cut. And the only thing that's different about tiger oak and quarter-sawn oak are the way that they're cut. It's the same piece of wood, it's just milled differently. And with tiger oak, there's a lot of waste. So that was a way for a builder like this family to show that they had a lot of wealth to spend on the interior of their property. And then of course, the showpiece of the entryway, this gorgeous central hall entry, beautiful main staircase up to incredible stained glass windows that mimic on the landing the stained glass on the entryway. This is definitely a room that was meant to impress visitors as they came in the front door for the first time. This is a room that says, I've made a lot of money off of my bricks. Come see where I spent it. Come into the main living room with me. Here we are in what would have been the main parlor. This would have been where guests were received once they came through that front door. If they made it to a parlor, if they were close enough to the family to actually get to sit down and visit, this is where they would have been entertained. One of the things that I always find so fascinating about these homes that look so magnificent and mammoth from the exterior is often, once you get inside, the rooms are relatively diminutive compared to the scale of the exterior. And we see that in this room. But even though it's not a huge room, the scale of the ceiling, the height of the doors give it a feeling of opulence and grandeur. There are things in this room that make it absolutely spectacular, and what we're so lucky with this home is that so much of its original material has been retained. This house has not been really updated since 1997, so we're working on 30 years since its last facelift. But she's got so much of her original beauty still waiting here for you. These are one of my favorite elements, the original stained glass bookcases flanking this beautiful central window, mammoth window with all of its original wavy glass. You probably can't tell from the shot, but these inset shamrock stained glass pieces are iridescent, the height of stained glass fashion at the time, of course, influenced by Louis Comfort Tiffany. This design you'll see is slightly softer here, so a touch more Art Nouveau influence in this stained glass design than we have in the entryway and on the formal landing. So like I said, many different architectural styles taking place in this house. This fireplace is extraordinary. It seems fairly simple when you look at it, but these are probably batch elder tiles. Of course, we can't tell unless we take them off, and we're not going to do that. But they have an iridescent glaze, so they mimic the look of the stained glass in the bookcases. And another beautiful quarter-sawn oak mantelpiece. 2 sets of pocket doors, one entering from the entryway and this one into the dining room. And of course, they all still roll beautifully. Come dine with me. Invited to a dinner party? Here is where you would dine. This glorious dining room with this time 6-foot tall wainscoting surrounding the room with this beautiful quarter-sawn oak. Isn't it amazing that all of this woodwork has lasted over 100 years without being touched by paint? I love it. And then what an incredible feature we still have. How has this made it all of these years without being ripped out of this house? No idea, but we retain our beautiful original buffet with stained glass and sconces. This stained glass design, more iridescent glass, so again, very trendy for the time. This time more linear in design, so edging toward the arts and crafts period. What lives behind the stairs, at the back of the house? That's the servant spaces. So off of this room, we have the entry into the servant spaces, the butler's pantry and the kitchen. This is an original 1904 butler's pantry. You'll see this walled unit, something that I would kill for in one of my kitchens or bath designs. The glass in the sliding doors is original and plenty of storage for china, servingware. You see even the original hooks for the teacups that are still in place. The light fixture in the room is 1930s deco in design. As I've said, it's apparent that this house had an electrical redesign in the 1930s, and here we have a skyscraper light fixture, one of Kevin's favorite design features to find in these homes. This beautiful swinging oak door, and behind it hides a radiator. But what's in the radiator? A warming shelf. Dishes would be brought into the butler's pantry and placed inside this radiator to be kept warm until it was time to serve. Now into the kitchen. As you can see, this poor kitchen needs a lot of love. It hasn't been updated since 1997, and the last time this house was owned and occupied, it was a bed and breakfast. But so much space to utilize to create a beautiful modern kitchen should you desire. Then just steps off of that, we have access to the elevator, which goes all the way to the 3rd floor, and then we have behind the stairs, the servants' quarters. Let's take you for a look in there. So who's a fan of the old British television show Upstairs, Downstairs? It was a television show that recounted the lives of the wealthy family that lived in the main part of the home and then the servants that existed downstairs, out of sight, out of mind of the owners of the home. Well, this is a downstairs space. I'm standing behind that main grand stairway. I have access to the servant stairs, I have access to the kitchen, and this is where servants would have walked back and forth to maintain the home and the lives of the owners of the property, but maintaining their own privacy in their own space, out of sight, out of mind. So come through and let me show you an important space. Here we have a downstairs bathroom, and it's original, you can tell. I find that very interesting. And through this door, at the very back of the home is a small room, but very lovely, 2 grand windows, gorgeous paneling. But my suspicion is that this room would have been for either the main butler or the main housekeeper of the house, so that they would have had access to all of the formal spaces in the front of the room, but also direct access to the servant spaces. It's one of the few homes that we've toured that has such clearly delineated public, private, and servant spaces. Come back to the front with me and we'll go down the other side of the house. On the other side of the hall, from the formal entertaining parlor, we have what would have been the family's private parlor. As you can see, the finishes in here are much less ornate. We still have what traditionally would be called wainscoting, but when we get this short, we often refer to it as bishop's board around the perimeter of the room. We still have beautiful, huge windows, which would have allowed natural light to stream into this space. We have pocket doors, but you'll see there's no fireplace in here. We have a radiator. There's no additional ornamental trim. This is a simple space where the family would have spent time when they were not entertaining. I don't know that it was originally painted. I haven't been able to determine that or not, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was, to give the family a lot of light, airy feel. Again, at a time not necessarily during an electrified period of this house, so that during the day this would have been a bright, airy space. Right through here, we have a wide secondary hallway just off of the front hall. This door could have been opened to allow a breeze to pass through. With this huge pocket door, the family spaces would have been well ventilated. And this hallway is the dividing line between the public space and the servant space, the family space and the servant space. But it's divided by this gorgeous oak door with stained glass side lights that match both the entryway and the landing on the second floor. So who's ready to go up that monumental staircase with me? Come on, let's do it. We talk all the time about the difference in public spaces and private spaces in these historic homes, and I don't think many of you realize just how true that was over the decades in these properties. They were built to impress. This was a time when there were very few telephones. Of course, there were no smartphones, there was no email, and so to visit with your friends, you had to pay calls. And so homes were designed to impress the people who came to see you. Downstairs, as we've discussed, all the wood is oak, from the ceiling to the floor. We have different cuts, we have different stain types, but the floor is oak, the stairs are oak, the banister, handrail, and spindles are all oak. But up here on this level, we have pine floors. Pine was very inexpensive. It was used in even the cheapest of homes at that time. So this is a clear delineation between the money spent downstairs in public spaces and the money spent upstairs in private spaces. We have 5 bedrooms up here, so let's take a look inside them and see what they hold. There are 5 fairly matching bedrooms up here, so I'm not going to walk you through them all individually. We'll show them all to you, but they all look mostly like this. As I mentioned, this home was last used as a bed and breakfast, and so some decisions were made stylistically that probably today we would all find ways to work around. One of them being that almost every room has a jacuzzi tub right in the middle of it. So if we were to buy this home, we would rework these 5-bedroom spaces into probably 3-bedroom spaces that had en-suites. But each room has a jacuzzi tub and then a powder room off of it. But the reason that I love this room so much, of all 5, this is my favorite, is because this room has these beautiful original French doors with beveled glass that access the 2nd-story porch. So come out here and take a look. Well, I think of all the spaces in this entire home, this is probably my favorite space because I'm an outdoor girl. Not only are we outdoors on the 2nd floor, we have a view of the beautiful historic district across the street. It's an absolutely stunning space, and I know that with a little bit of patio furniture, this would be where I'd be spending my time. We're back inside now, and as I said, there are 4 additional bedrooms. So with 5 bedrooms upstairs, you can easily convert these into probably 3 good-sized bedrooms, maybe one with a Jack and Jill bath, and then one that becomes your main bedroom. Now I'm gonna walk you right over there behind the cameraman into what were the servants' quarters for the upstairs. Again, these are very different than any other servants' quarters that we see in these spaces, so I wanna make sure you see them. Come on. Here we are behind the servant's door. So here, this shows you the difference in thinking at the turn of the 20th century and modern thinking. This is the only bathroom for upstairs, and it's hidden behind the servant's door so that this space is never seen by anyone, even the family, unless they come to utilize it. I love the sink in this space. It's shaped like a heart, and I want to take it home with me. Here we have the stairway to the 3rd floor. Now, of course, local lore is that the 3rd floor was a ballroom. Now it's an apartment. I hate to break this to you. Ballrooms were very rarely on the 3rd floor. People put their money into their public spaces on the 1st floor, and if large parties were thrown, that's why we have double parlors or that opening between the living room and the dining room so that dancing could be held in those spaces. No one wanted people traipsing through their private space up narrow back staircases to hold balls and throw parties. Those would have been done in the main room. So 3rd floor was for servants. This pine door, as you see again here in this back space, even the door surrounds are pine. The stairway is pine. No more oak in this space. Behind this door is the elevator. It's been here for quite some time. I'm going to say it's early 20th century. I'm not sure how early. I don't think it's extant to the home, but it is very, very early. And I could be wrong. It could be extant to the home, but it is an early elevator in here. And then this room is the upstairs maid's room. Again, another small space, but with beautiful windows. She has access to a 3rd floor balcony, and she has a small washroom in here. This would have been the maid's room for the lady's maid of the home. So the lady of the home, her maid would have been accessible to her at all times. And then behind the camera, access to the servant stairs that go down into that kitchen area. A fascinating space in this historic property. The 3rd floor has now been converted into one relatively large private residence apartment. When this was a bed and breakfast, this would have been the innkeeper's space. And should you want to turn it into an event center or a bed and breakfast, you could turn it into an innkeeper's space as well. However, the last time it was remodeled was, again, in the late 90s, and we would give it a full overhaul. What would we do with it? Well, we think it would make an incredible media room. So, whatever you want to do, there's plenty of space to do it in. We've mentioned that this house needs a little bit of work, and I would go so far as to say that it needs a moderate amount of work. But like I said, so much of the original material remains that if you were the one to devote your time, energy, and resources into this property, you would have an absolute showpiece. One of the things you would have to replace are the newel post lamps. There's very clearly original holes for original newel post lamps that should have sat on either side of this beautiful central entry stairway. How much fun would it be to shop for the perfect newel post matching set of lights? Sign me up for that task. Well, we hope you've enjoyed this tour of the Horace Franklin Rogers house here in beautiful Fort Smith, Arkansas. As we said, Fort Smith started its life as a rough and ready frontier town on the very edge of civilization. It was home to the hanging judge. It had a notorious red light district. And then, slightly into the beginning of the 20th century, this town burst into a blooming metropolis of industry. And that's what we see here in this beautiful property. Are you the next caretaker of the Horace Franklin Rogers house? You could be, all for $800,000. This mansion would make a wonderful bed and breakfast, wedding venue, or event center. And Fort Smith would love for you to call it home. We'll see you next time.